This is what my day looks like as a law student who works full-time and takes night classes. It's a lot. Welcome back to another episode of Law School After Dark, where we're studying cases after work and hoping we remembered to eat. This week's episode is talking about my law school routine, night student edition, part-time student edition, evening student edition, whatever your law school calls your part-time program. We're going to talk about my morning, my work day, evening, and weekends. So I talked a little bit about this a couple of vlogs ago where I kind of showed what my calendar looked like and talked about how I balance work, life, and school. But I thought I would go into a little bit more detail about what my actual days look like. I'm going to give you times that I wake up. I'm going to give you the times that I study. I'm going to kind of break it all down piece by piece to show you what works for me. And again, this is what works for me. This is not going to be what works for everybody. This is not going to be something that works for my classmates, for you. This is just what works for me. And I really wanted to see what part-time students' schedules looked like, because when I was watching vlogs getting ready to start law school, it was all a bunch of full-time students who were devoting, 8 to 6 working on law school every day, and that's not something that I can do as someone who works full-time. So this was a video that I really wanted to see when I was starting the part-time program, so hopefully it's also something that you want to see. So I'm going to kind of do weekdays first. My mornings, I wake up around 6:45. I then get up, I get ready for work, I pack my lunch, I make sure that my cats are taken care of. My dog on weekdays is at a dog sitter. He stays at my best friend's house, which I've talked about before. So I don't have to worry about my dog on like Monday through Thursday, but I do still have cats, so I have to worry about them. And then I commute to work. My commute to work in the morning is about 45 minutes. So some days it's longer depending on traffic, some days it's shorter. During finals times, my commute to work, I am listening to our lectures. So our lectures get recorded via Echo 360, so we can watch those over and over again. And so I will just listen to it because that way it's just repetition. I'm someone who learns by repetition. Otherwise, on my commute to work, I'm listening to an audiobook or I'm just listening to Spotify or music. When I get to work, my work day is 8 a.m. to 4:30 and I get a 30-minute lunch break. So I try to carve out time on my lunch break for reading, working on outlines, finishing assignments, things like that. And my coworkers know that. They know that when I'm in school, I might go to the break room to heat up my lunch, but then I'm going to go straight back to my office because I use that 30 minutes to get work done for school. So that is just how I use my lunch break. Some of my classmates don't work on their lunch break. They don't do anything. They use it for break. But for me, it's just something that works, so that's what I do. My evenings look a little different depending on the days that I have classes and things like that. So I'm going to use last semester's schedule to kind of talk to you about what my evening did look like. I start class every day at 5:45, Monday through Thursday. So on Monday, I had class from 5:45 to 9:25. So I had 2 classes. One was a 2-hour class, one was an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. I can't really remember which it was. I think an hour and a half. So class started at 5:45. I had a 10-minute break between my 2 classes, and then I didn't get to go home until 9:25. On Tuesdays, class again started at 5:45, but I got out on Tuesdays at 8:55. So I was getting to leave 30 minutes earlier. Wednesdays were my short days. I went to class from 5:45 to 7:25. No, I went to class from 5:45 to 7:15, which was very nice because I got to leave at 7:15. I only had one class on Wednesdays. And then Thursdays were again 5:45 to 9:55. So again, I have that about an hour between getting off work, commuting to school, and then before class starts. In that hour, I would try to eat dinner. If I brought something, I would usually eat in my car. Sometimes I would go to our lounge and eat in the student lounge, but most of the time I was just like quickly eating in my car because I wanted to either have that hour to just relax because I was going to be in class for 3 hours, or I was going to just kind of take time to read over something if I didn't finish the readings or something like that. When class got out, I go home, and I am a night showerer, so I would shower and get ready for bed. I am not that person who does any homework after class because I just mentally cannot do that. I am not a night owl. I'm also not an early bird. I'm not either. So I'm not someone who's going to stay up later to continue working on things. I'm going to take my time, get ready for bed, and then just go to bed to do the same thing the next day. My weekends, I talked a little bit a couple of videos ago about how I have no law school Fridays and Saturdays. Those are hard boundaries that I do have in place so that I don't burn myself out in law school. And so on Saturdays, I am spending time with my friends. I'm running errands. I am doing things for me personally that have nothing to do with law school. Now, that could mean hanging out with my law school friends. That's fine. And maybe we talk about school, but for the most part, I'm going to not have anything to do with law school on those days because I need a break mentally and physically. Sundays, I talked about doing my Sunday resets. So Sundays are when I reset my house, I do my laundry, I meal prep for the week, I get all of that done, but I also try to get my readings done for the week. Now, sometimes I do not get to finish because we have so many readings or things like that, but I try to stay as much ahead as I possibly can. So I showed my Notion template so that I know when things are due. So if I know that I only have 10 pages of reading for this week, but next week I see that we have 50 pages of reading, maybe I'm going to try to read like 20 of those pages so that I can break it into 30 pages each week. I'm going to try to stay ahead as much as possible. That does not always happen, and I'm also someone who tends to forget what I read. So that's something that sort of works for me, but I do still at least try to get the reading done. And that's why I have that hour before class, so that if I read this last week, I can take the time to go back through my book brief and be like, oh, okay, so this was the issue, this was the holding, this is what we're learning today. So that really works. On Sundays, I also have the group study sometimes, so we'll work on outlines or just general studying of topics that we know we are struggling with. That's just kind of what works for me and my friends. If you see my cat, I'm so sorry. He's going a little crazy right now. So I do the catch up on readings, do my outlines and prep, and just try to get as much done on Sundays as I possibly can. So that's what my schedule looks like. I know that it seems pretty simple, but it's something that works for me. It works for my brain, and I have done well with that schedule. Not top of my class, but this last semester I made 3 A's, so I am doing okay in law school. I know that this is what works for me, so this is what I'm going to continue to do. You have to find what is going to work for you and what your law school routine is going to look like working full-time and going to school part-time. And that's going to depend a lot on what your schedule looks like at work as well. Is this law school routine sustainable? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But for right now, it is what works for me. That's it for this week's Law School After Dark. We'll be back next week with the same struggle but a different topic.